we thank you for being with us tonight. So, with further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. So, tonight we have Jenelle Harris and Nikki Gusz, two great friends of mine, two great people. People who have worked very hard, both in the community as well as just personally. Jenelle is an alumni from Swarthmore College. She has an MBA from UC Berkeley Haas and currently getting her uh, personal coaching, certified personal coaching. And she is currently the case team lead at Bridge Span Group. And she has been a lifelong strategist. Both her and Nikki worked at TFA as well as Deloitte Consulting. And so she has a passion for education as well as working with people of color, disenfranchised, and lower income groups. Nikki is an alum from Cornell in Arizona State. We went to Fuqua together where we got our MBA. And she's the co-founder of Lloyd and COO of Lloyd, which is a career co-pilot platform. And she's a former educator and HR consultant. So we really are going to get some great gems tonight from Nikki from a tactical side and from Jenelle from the mental emotional wellness side as you kind of pursue your career explorations and how to overcome any issues that you may see so you can keep plugging away and get to the experience and get to the career path that you want to be in. So without further ado, Nikki, we can get started with the presentation. I'll bring that up. Are you there, Nikki? Where is- I think we may have lost Nikki.
Yeah, we're Anthony, this is Jordan. We're still having some technical issues getting her in. So we're working on that right now.
Okay. So while we were waiting for Nikki, we're having this is our first run, so apologize for some of the technical difficulties that we're having. But a little bit about Harmonee. We are working on building a social and culturally relevant platform, and so hopefully on this platform, you will find tools and webinars and forums that can help with any kind of the mental wellness pieces that we're looking for in our lives. Even though we're driving towards working with students, we're hoping to build a panel and a platform that works with everyone. So after this webinar, please take a look around, see if there's a few things that may inspire you and take part in our forums. We have a couple of videos up now that could help in these trying times that we have today. And so things are getting a lot more isolated, and we just want to bring together people to have a better experience. So Janelle, we may just move to your piece first.
Okay,
So
that works.
if that worked for you. Okay.
Sure.
And then we'll come back to the tactical piece.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Well, Anthony has loading my slides. I'll just reintroduce myself. So my name is Jenelle Harris. I am originally from California, the Bay Area. I'm from Oakland originally, and I currently live in Atlanta. I was in New York, but relocated to Atlanta due to the pandemic. Um, as Anthony said, I am a manager for the Bridgespan Group, which is a social impact consulting firm. And I manage strategic projects with nonprofits and philanthropy clients. Earlier this year, I also added the title of professional life coach to my resume. And so I also deliver in-house coaching with the Bridgespan Group. And I also have a set of private clients. I generally coach millennials. I work with people of color and women. And while often our conversations will generally start with topics about work, I'm working with clients navigating job transitions, just trying to figure out what they want to do, or starting new businesses. But without fail, all of those conversations generally end up becoming us diving into their self-care practices, their self-limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, inner critic, lack of self-acceptance, just understanding their inner world, because generally it's not a lack of opportunities or a lack of resources or lack of skills. It's just how they're perceiving themselves and their situation that is getting in the way. So as their coach, I help them navigate that and get to a place of, in coaching, what we call internal alignment. And from there, they can take empowered action forward. So I'll share with you some of my own experiences and some of my experiences working with clients about how they've been able to navigate external barriers or no's, or even internal no's and barriers to move forward, even in spite of external challenges. So we can go to the next page and I'll share a little bit about my story. This will be a little bit of a testimony. So on the left is like often how we think about success, that it's supposed to be linear. If you're really good at what you do, then things are just going to work out. And obviously, we know it just doesn't work like that. When I was in business school, we're going to go back 4 years ago, I did an internship with Deloitte. And, in business school, the path is you're supposed to do an internship, do a really great job. They're going to give you all this money and they're going to invite you to come back the next year. But my internship didn't really go that way. It wasn't what I expected. I didn't really have a good experience. I frankly wasn't that good at the job. And I didn't get an offer, which is like, taboo in business school world. I was pretty disappointed and kind of embarrassed about not getting the offer. Basically being told, no, like, we don't want you to come back here. And I gave myself permission to not recruit that year. I actually, after the internship ended in August, I didn't even try looking for a job again until the following April. I just gave myself that time to enjoy my last year of school. I studied abroad, I traveled. I gave myself time to recover. When it did come time to start recruiting, I made a really firm decision that, I was like, I'm probably going to graduate without a job yet, but I'm deciding before that time comes that, like, I'm going to use this as a time to really put into testament what I truly believe. So I was already deep into my own personal development. I was already doing a lot of work on my internal world. And I decided that I wasn't going to freak out about not having a job by graduation. I was going to use this as an opportunity to really prove to myself and others and practice what I preached. So again, I made this decision. I was like, I'm going to get a job. I don't know when it's coming, but I know it's just a matter of time. It's not an if, it's just a when. I gave myself sort of space to think about, well, what do I really want? Like, I know I want a job. I know I need an income. Like, I can't afford to be unemployed for too long. But like, what do I want that job to feel like? What kind of people do I want to work with? What is the energy of the type of work I want to be doing? I knew I wanted to be in a place that I was appreciated, where people really wanted me there, where I was challenged, where I was doing strategy and so forth, where I felt like my work was meaningful. I did a little bit of math and figured out, like, well, what is my baseline salary? Like, what can I actually, like, not afford to go under? So I kind of just took stock of, like, a rough sketch of what I was looking for. The next thing I did was what I now call is I made kind of like a belief plan. I didn't want to show up in the world as an unemployed person. I decided that my job isn't here yet, but it's only a matter of time. So what would the version of myself be like who was already employed at her quote unquote dream job? What would her life be like? And I tried to step into that now. So I thought, well, like if I'm have a job, I'm probably gonna, I don't know, take really good care of myself and enjoy my time. I'm not just gonna sit at home and work all the time and do job apps. So I still allowed myself to have fun and see friends and work out and have joy in my life, even though I was in this, apply for jobs mode. With that in mind, I just knew that the best thing I could do to take care of my mindset so that I could show up in these interviews feeling optimistic and showing up as the best version of myself, I had to invest in my wellness. So even though I was in grind mode trying to apply for jobs, that wasn't an excuse to abandon myself. I still had to, take care of myself, go to the gym. I lived in Oakland on Lake Merritt, so I would spend time there, family, journal, rest. All the things that I knew would help me really feel as best I could about myself. I protected my energy. People were always asking me how my job search was going. I had a go-to line. I didn't spend any energy on explaining what was or wasn't happening. It was just like, it's in the works. Everything's gonna be fine. I know a good job is coming. That's it. I'm not sharing anything else. And then the last thing I did was I humbled myself and I got help. My classmates who already had jobs did case prep with me. They did mock interviews with me. I got help from career services. I wish back then I had a therapist and a coach. That's the only thing I probably would have done differently. But with all of that in mind, I just really went all in and was like, I'm not going to freak out this time. And within 3 weeks after graduation, I got an offer from Bridgespan and started 2 weeks after that. And so that to me is an explanation of like, I got a very strong no, but it landed me in a really great opportunity that I'm still getting to reap the benefits of now. So let's go to the next page and we'll talk about how this links to some actual psychological elements. So many of you have probably heard of the term growth mindset. And so what my story really exemplifies is I leaned into this. I decided that this is an opportunity. My growth mindset is about choosing to see our external circumstances as an opportunity for growth, as opposed to seeing them as evidence of something being wrong with us or as something, proving that we can't get this right or that we're only good at but so many things. Or, I'm using my story as an example. I could have chosen to see that my internship not going well as evidence that I didn't belong in consulting. Or that I should just not even consider trying strategy again. But I chose to see that as like, maybe that just wasn't the right fit for me. And like, what did I have to learn from that experience that could inform what I chose to do next? You can go to the next page. So here are some examples of other ways that like a fixed mindset can show up versus a growth mindset. So I mean, if you look at the middle column of a fixed mindset, really and truly, all these examples are just so limiting. I'm not good at networking, so I shouldn't even try. I'm already good at interviews, so I don't need to try to get better. If I don't have a credential, I'm not even going to look at those roles. Every time you get a no, it's just further evidence that that's all you're ever going to get. And it just really limits the opportunities for you. And the reality is that, and we'll talk about this next, is when you're sort of deep in this mindset, it impacts everything else. It impacts how you show up, your energy, your attitude. It impacts how you show up in interviews, frankly. And none of these are very attractive ways to show up, right? So it's just becoming aware of the thoughts that we're thinking and, as much as possible, trying to shift to another way of looking at it. I never considered myself to be someone who liked networking, period. But the job I have now, I didn't get it because I cold applied. I actually did get it through networking, which is not something that I like doing, but someone referred me. I met someone that I'd never met before and we had a conversation. They referred me again and I ultimately got the interview. So you have to really push yourself sort of outside of your comfort zone when you're in a growth mindset and just choose to see, again, opportunity instead of limitations. On the next page, we have a model that I often reference with my clients where, generally we think that like the way to get results is action. There's nothing wrong with that, and that is partially true. It's in the model, yes. Action is part of the process of getting to results. But when we really look at it, the very first step of this model is our thoughts. So circumstances in and of themselves don't really have meaning. The meaning they have is the meaning that we ascribe to them. So if I get turned down for a job, right, there's nothing necessarily wrong with getting turned down for a job. If it's not a job you want, you don't care. If there's a possibility that you think that job would have been a bad fit for you, then it's like a blessing in disguise, right? The only reason why we think it's a bad thing is because of our thoughts about it or our beliefs. And that leads to how we feel, right? If I think that I missed out on something, then I start to feel bad about myself. I start to assume the worst. And that impacts how I show up in the world, and it impacts my actions in subconscious ways, which will frankly sabotage my results. And it's a vicious cycle. So in coaching, I really help people think about, when they show up with a limiting belief, or they're having results in their lives that aren't working for them, we try to get to the root cause. What are the beliefs that are informing this? And like, how can we really shift that so that you can show up in a more empowered way? Because we get to choose our thoughts. Those aren't fixed. Okay, next slide. So these are just a couple of the examples. So I really, in my own story, tried to anchor on the empowering interpretations of a no. Even when people probably thought I was like overly optimistic, I just refused to believe anything but these set of beliefs. I just truly believed that the right job was coming. It was only a matter of time. I got a lot of no's. I got more no's than I got yeses. Let's just say that. In fact, when I was applying for jobs after graduation, I only got one offer, which is the offer I got. And it's the offer I wanted, thankfully, but like every other thing I applied to, I didn't get. So I just chose to believe like no's are part of the process to getting yeses. Like they're part of that squiggly line on that nonlinear path to success. I chose to believe every time that something better was coming, that all of this was great practice, that the no didn't have to mean anything but what I decided it meant. I've worked with clients who get really stuck on the right-hand side of this page. They believe that not getting an opportunity is evidence of something wrong with them, that they did something wrong. And it's not that, you certainly can look at an interview or an application experience and try to understand, what did I do that maybe I would have done differently, or how can I ask for feedback? But that's different than these disempowering beliefs, right? Because from a growth mindset, getting feedback is like an important process of growth and helping us get better. And that can still be part of the empowering interpretation of no. But the difference is that in an empowering interpretation, we always believe that we're still on track to getting what we want, and that a no is not a block. There's a quote I love that says that it's not a denial, it's just a delay. And that's how I try to look at it. And I also encourage my clients to think about it. So if we go to the next page, just to recap, when you're in the process of navigating a career, looking for a new job, or even trying to do something different in your current job, these are sort of the strategies that I encourage for my clients and the strategies I took for myself as well. So the first thing is just to get really clear and decide, what do you want? And when I say what do you want, it's not just like, I want to be a manager at XYZ company doing XYZ thing. It's like, how do you want to feel? What do you want your life to be like? What are you really looking forward to? What's exciting about that opportunity? Like really live into that. In addition to your to-do lists, like make a belief plan. What would you have to believe about yourself to have that new reality that you want? And then what can you do now to practice that? It's literally that act as if. So if the version of your life you want is really different, what are actions that you can take right now? So in my case, it was like, when I'm employed, I'm still going to have a social life and I'm still going to take really good care of myself. So I chose to do that now. I was trying to act as if I was already that employed, flourishing version of myself. And that sort of links to the next thing, which is make a self-care plan. Make that as much of a priority as everything else. Like, yes, you need to apply to jobs and do all of the networking and the other work that Nikki will talk about, but you also have to take care of yourself. So prioritize that as well. The next thing is to set boundaries. You don't owe anyone anything. You don't have to tell everyone in your life about how your job search is going. Only share with people that you trust to really be positive and supportive. And that links to the last step, which is ask for help. You don't have to do it alone. And have a tribe of people around who can support and rally and be there for you in the process, so that you really can make sure that you're taking as good care of your mind as possible in this process.
Thank you, Janelle. Those are very important tools and a great testimony about tough times. And with us being in tough times now, with COVID, with isolation, with just the economic conditions, how would you know, tell someone or help someone think through the dream, searching for that dream job versus taking that proverbial bird in hand or looking for something that's a little bit easier to get right now?
Oh, Nikki's with us too. Well, I can answer, and then I'd love to hear what Nikki has to say about this. So I guess I'm gonna say that like even the option set that you shared could be like a little triggering, right? Because it makes it seem like, oh, my only options are dream job or settle and just take this other thing. And I always tell my clients, like, whenever there's a binary option set, that is a red flag. There's always like multiple options on the table. So there could be situations in which someone is like, really, really, I need to be able to support myself and my family right now. So like, I don't know that I can afford to wait, X months to before this thing comes. So I think it's really about like getting clear on what are your priorities right now, not feeling stuck ever. That just because you decide that there's a short-term situation that you need to solve for, it doesn't mean that you're off track. Again, success is not linear. It can be squiggly. And that also, sometimes the other thing I think that can be more expansive is if we think in terms of like, what is your mission? In social impact consulting, we talk a lot about like, what is your theory of change? And if you're getting an opportunity that is helping you on the path to fulfilling your mission, then it's okay that there will be like different steps along the way. And so as long as you're still in alignment with that, then it gives you a little bit more expansiveness and optionality for your next step. So your next step doesn't have to be your dream job because it's not really about the job. The job is just a platform to doing your mission. So those are kind of like some of the ways I would say to try to make it more expansive so people don't feel like they either get their dream job or they don't. It's just so much bigger than that.
Yes, thank you. Nikki, we would love to hear your thoughts there, and then we can move into the presentation as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hey, everyone. I apologize for the technical issues. It's such an honor to be with this community tonight. Such a wonderful group of people. I actually missed the question because I was still solving my tech issues. So if one of you don't mind repeating it, then I'm happy to try to add whatever I can, although I'm sure Jenelle and Anthony already like totally knocked it out of the park, but I'll try to jump in if I can.
Yeah, we were just talking about navigating the thought process of your dream job versus a job at hand or something that's easier to go after in this COVID economic environment that we're in currently.
Yeah, it's such a good question and literally something I was wrestling with one of my members today. And so I think building on what, I heard Jenelle mention, is your first job doesn't have to be the last job of your life. In fact, most of us will probably have careers that are decades long. So I think if your first job, and I think Janelle's comments around mindset are so important, knowing what your intentions are, what your goals are, and if you can kind of check, that major one or the first couple, that it's in alignment with that, that's a great step forward because the reality is a career is an exploration in a lot of ways. The first job doesn't have to answer all your questions about your career, do all the things you want to do. If it can maybe answer a few, maybe it's you really want to work in mission aligned work. Maybe you're really going after that high salary. Maybe there's a certain geography you've always wanted to live in, and then a job is allowing you to live in that place. So figure out what those first couple priorities are for you, and then kind of go after that, and then continue evolving your goals from there.
Sounds great. So we'll get into your presentation, Nikki. Everyone on the call tonight, get your questions ready. Right after Nikki presents, we'll have a Q&A session.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen and pull up my slides. So just let me know if for some reason y'all aren't seeing them. I'm originally from the Midwest, so I can just chat away about anything for a little while. Yeah, thanks again, Anthony, for allowing me to be part of this community tonight. My name is Nikki Gusz, and I'm one of the co-founders of Lloyd, and we're building the homepage for careers. As I mentioned, I'm originally from the Midwest, but now I live in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado. So if you're ever in the area, please let me know. I'm happy to have socially distanced meetups. Just a little bit about my background. I like to share this because I've made many career changes. I started my career as a classroom teacher. I studied history as an undergrad, really different than where I am now. I've gone back to grad school to help make a transition. I've just transitioned jobs. So I've been in really small organizations. Now I'm in an organization of a few people. I've also worked at some of the biggest companies in the country. So I've kind of seen it all. You can definitely experience that in your career. And it's important to think about our careers because they're long. As I shared before, we all spend about a third of our life working. And so really at Lloyd, what I'm passionate about is people in the first 2 decades of their career. And so we are a career co-pilot service. We really work with people as they're navigating careers, not just Googling their way through careers, and trying to provide very clear and structured pathways and resources as you answer common career questions in those first 2 exciting decades of your career, where you're often making very big decisions that are important from where you'll head from there. So I really wanted to start off with how do we navigate today's context? It's literally on the headline of papers, what's going on in the economy, what's going on with jobs. And so it can be scary. I can empathize with that position. I graduated in 2008 as an undergrad. I know there are many students on the line, so I empathize with graduating in a time of uncertainty. And so I wanted to share just a few tips about how to manage the uncertainty that is existing in the arena of careers today. And so the first thing I would say is to just have that clarity, kind of to the question that was asked. Be very clear about what's important to you and understand that may not be important to your good friend, your family members. And so to really try to be clear about what your goals are and follow those intentions, and being very strategic and thoughtful about how you get to those goals. The next piece I would say is accountability. So making sure that you are setting up a good system for yourself, that you have a structure in place to keep yourself moving forward. So just think about if you've been part of a team maybe that worked to a goal, having other people on that team encourage you, have them be a resource for you if you're facing a barrier or trying to solve a challenge, and also cheering you on when you have a big victory. Really try to create a system of accountability for yourself. And often community can be a really important part of that. Be creative. We're at a unique moment in human history together. How can you take this to perhaps your advantage? So one thing that I've seen in the market is people have become more geographically flexible because suddenly overnight, a lot of people now can work remotely. Definitely not the case in all jobs in the economy. You have to kind of know the industry you're in, but that's an example of maybe an organization you wouldn't have worked for before. You can consider now because they might be more flexible about where you could potentially work. Contingency plan. This is optional because I think for some people it's a stressor. For some people it helps them move through stress. Sometimes if you're feeling nervous about if things don't work out with maybe your plan A, think about how you would face what would be the worst case scenario and how you would work through it. Don't spend all day thinking about it. Maybe take 30 minutes and plot, what would be your plan of attack if you had to face your worst case plan. Some people, not always the best exercise for them, but I have seen it be very helpful for many people. And then finally, I'd say the last pieces are kind of back to some of the mindset pieces. So being resilient, job searches can take a lot of time. They can be a long haul, but really you're investing in not only your career now, but your career long term. And so think about all that you can learn in this perhaps search process, for example, to help you move forward in your career. And then have a real sense of possibility. There are people who are getting jobs. People are getting hired. People are getting promotions. People are landing dream opportunities. It often takes more time and often takes some flexibility, but it can happen. So stay resilient, don't give up on yourself. And I would just say, I'll speak more tactically to how to implement some of these in the next couple of minutes, but they're really things that no matter, definitely applicable during now in our economy, but no matter the situation can be very helpful. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk very tactically about how to approach a job search process. And so the first piece, going back to that clarity question, is really answering, what do you want to do with your life? I think that's a question that runs through many people's heads. Maybe start with, well, what are a few different assumptions I want to test out about the career that I want to have? And a book that I love that does this is called Designing Your Life. It uses design thinking, which is very creative, as how to problem solve through your career. And so it provides you with a language and a set of skills to actually think about how to move forward in your career. I also really like the Big Five personality assessment, and both of these are very research backed. There are a lot of resources out there that are fun to take, but not necessarily research backed. And so I think these are two great resources if you're trying to navigate maybe some bigger 50,000-foot questions around where you want to head in your career. The next piece aligns to that accountability piece we talked about before. So coming up with your plan, getting clear about priorities. The format doesn't matter to me. Maybe you're an Excel person, maybe you're a journal person, maybe you're a Word document person, maybe something totally different, a whiteboard person. Just be very clear about your goals. What do you need to invest to move towards those goals? What's realistic with the time you have available every week with other commitments, whether it be classes or job or family or social, and then keep yourself accountable. So that's where it's really building that community of others who can help you move forward. Maybe setting up a weekly meeting. Maybe there's another group of people who are also applying to jobs. So, setting up that team to help you move forward with your plan. So I also like to mention narrative and network here, because a lot of people will jump right to a resume or cover letter, which are on the next slide, and we'll definitely talk about those. But the narrative is how you tell your story. And so this is something you can practice. Literally, I encourage people to tape themselves doing it, really thinking about in a situation where you have to answer the question, what are you interested in, or tell me about yourself. That first question you might get if you're having a networking conversation, or if you are maybe in an interview context. Think about how you want to tell your story, and think about how you can do it succinctly. And so, structure your answer. Maybe it can be chronologically or around certain themes that you want to be resonant in your career with who you're speaking to. So really, really practice it, structure it, and it'll be natural over time, but it's something not to forget about. And then you also can start those conversations with ease, because you already know the answer to the first question. And then finally, so network. So this is about building a community of people who can be your advocates in your career, your scouts on the ground when you're looking for a job. And so for many of us, this feels very unnatural at first. And the best thing to do is just get started. Pull the Band-Aid off. Practice a networking conversation with a friend. Come up with a list of questions that you can use in those conversations. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. Start with people you actually are genuinely interested in learning about their career. An informational interview is a great way to do that. It can only even be 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour long. I'd say most are probably between 15 to 30 minutes. And it's a great way just to learn about someone's career path and build knowledge about maybe an industry you're interested in, a company, etc. Don't forget to follow up with a thank you note. And it's a way that some research says up to 85% of people find jobs this way. So it can be something that's very helpful in building a community of people who can support you in your career, not only now as you might be looking for a job, for example, but down the road as well. Okay, and then we'll dive into the things that most people think about in a job search, but I like to just mention those other ones first, because they can be even more critical sometimes to helping you find the right opportunity, for example, if you're looking for a job or wanting to make a career shift. So of course, resume. We all probably have them. If you don't, it's okay. I recently worked with someone who hadn't made a resume in 20 years, so you can definitely do it. And so it's a way to really talk about your skills and accomplishments. Rule of thumb is about a page long for each 10-year segment of your career. And finally, the content is really important. And so really trying to start your bullets with action verbs that are strong verbs that really demonstrate the leadership that you've had, and speaking to metrics. That's really key. It's like candy for the eyes of people who are reviewing your resume. Really trying to use numbers about how many people were impacted by something you worked on, or what were the results, or were there financial gains or changes because of what you did in your work. So those are some common things that will really make your resume shine. LinkedIn is a source a lot of people use to help with networking. So building relationships with people maybe you've known in the past, or even those you don't know. It can be a great way to search by different companies or types of roles. Send a connection to people that's personalized and authentically why you want to connect with them for an informational interview, for example. So it can be a great resource in addition to websites and things like that. And then finally, cover letters. So not all roles even require cover letters anymore. But if you are required to do one, making sure it's not just repetitive of your resume, but really pulling out themes or stories of impact that will make you shine and have your application rise to the top of the pile, which I'm sure will be the case for everyone on this call. So finally, wanted to transition to the theme of tonight. How do you overcome no, especially in this job market? And so just think if you do get a no, I want to talk about tactics first, and then talk a little bit back to the point about mindsets. I know a theme of tonight. So the first is, if you do get a no, if you're not asked back for another interview, or if you make it to the end of an application round but don't necessarily get a job offer, ask for feedback. Some organizations will be willing to get on the phone with you and even talk to you. That's definitely not always the case. Some will provide some written feedback. Some may not be willing to provide it, but at least try to ask for it in a diplomatic way, because it can be really helpful in understanding, if there was something that you can try to work on as you go forward in the process. If you happen to get several no's, so maybe you aren't getting interviews. So look at the roles you've applied for and do some self-assessment around, am I applying for kind of the right level of role? Do I need to expand my search? Is there something kind of going on? You may walk away and say like, hey, I'm going for competitive jobs. So I might get a lot of no's to start. But it is good to kind of step back, or if you get to, for example, a lot of interviews, but you're getting no's at the end of the process, then think about maybe there's more specifics about that company you need to speak to, or once again, ask them for feedback and see if you can learn anything else to help really finesse what your final round approach is. So if you do kind of do this assessment or postmortem, as some people call it, process, what I encourage you to do is to be analytical, look at your data as if you're an outsider, and then here we go to mindsets, move on. Don't let it be something that you're keeping you up at night, that you're stewing about. Learn from it and move forward, because forward progress in this process is so important. And so just another point about mindsets, a lot of times these are business decisions. Many places are they have so many applicants they'd love to hire. They maybe just don't have enough spots. So take it professionally, not personally. The person who you might not get a job from today may hire you in a different context or in a different company. So just think about everything as a way you can manage a relationship. And once again, forward progress. Just keep moving forward. It's so important in this process. So I think I've definitely spoken for enough time. So I'm happy to turn over to questions at this point. And let's hear from the group.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Nikki. And from the group, start to put your questions in the chat and we can get those answered for you. One of the questions that I do have, Nikki, you can start, and Jenelle, you can chime in as well, is how you both talked about networking. How do we network when we're networking in a group that we may not have a connection with, whether that's someone we know in that space or we don't feel like we connect with someone in that space? How do we go about networking and get into a position where we can be in the best position to apply and succeed at the application process?
Yeah, Anthony, it's a great question. And I think my image is frozen. I apologize. So maybe look like a little friendlier than I do in my very serious handshaking mode in my frozen image. So I apologize for that. No, I'm just teasing. But I think it's a really, I don't mean to make light of your question, Anthony, because I have been in the shoes of when you don't feel like there's maybe a natural connection to an organization. And so I would say, start first. Let me step back and say, start first and see if there is some type of connection you have with someone. So, common ones people will go to in an application process are: is there an organization that maybe you both have worked for? Do you have maybe a school that you've shared? Is there some type of extracurricular that you've been involved in together? Maybe there's an organization, a community organization that you've been involved from. Maybe you share geography of some sort, that a connection to a certain place. So just think about it broadly. I think a lot of people start with place of work and school, but there are a lot of other ways that you can bridge connections with people. And so I think that's a great way to start. If you feel like you're still having trouble getting traction, I think that's a great time to also go to the peer group that you've established, who are kind of your cheerleaders in the process. See if any of them have tried to establish a connection somewhere. Have they had any luck? Do they have any tips that they've seen kind of working in this market? And finally, I would say, if organizations are difficult to connect with, or if you're kind of not seeing the type of connection maybe in an interview process, or you're not sure that it's a fit, is I think an interview process is really telling of an organization. And so if you're not feeling kind of a culture connection, or I think sometimes culture, it can be overplayed, but I think if you're just feeling like it's not a place where you are seeing people you want to be colleagues with, like, go now, like, go before the offer's on the table, and find a place where you can have a great supervisor, in my opinion, and great colleagues who are going to help you in your career are oftentimes worth more than having a certain name or a certain kind of experience. It's people who are going to advocate for you in your career and help you push forward. And so that's my opinion. But I think that so broadly thinking about how you can bridge connection, asking others if you're struggling, and seeing if they have insights for you. And then finally, if people aren't seeing the value you provide, go find somewhere where they will value what you bring to the table.
Thank you. Jenelle, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so I actually have had some coaching sessions with clients where they'll bring up some resistance to networking. And so the first thing that I try to do is just understand, like, what are the beliefs that are making them feel like networking is not an option they can pursue? And so, like, some sample beliefs might be, well, I don't want to reach out to strangers, or no one's going to respond, or people don't respond to cold emails, or I don't want to bother my friends, or I feel some type of embarrassment about asking for help. I should already have a job by now, and so forth. So like the first thing we'll do is just try to like work through all of that, because those are the walls that are holding them back from taking steps forward. And once we can work through that and get them to a place where they feel more centered and like in alignment, they start to have all kinds of creative ideas, a lot of which Nikki just walked us through. But just maybe networking, maybe the first step is just telling your network, or the people that you know closest to you, that you're looking for a job, asking if people know, does someone work at these types of companies, feeling courageous enough to reach out to people that you don't have a personal connection with. I mean, maybe you'll send 10 emails or 10 LinkedIn messages and 8 out of the 10 won't respond, but if 2 do, like, that's success and you can keep moving forward. But generally, if there's any resistance to networking, really try to understand like what's really holding you back, because that is just a belief and not a fact. And if you're willing to release it, then you can find some creative opportunities to work around it.
Yeah, and I just want to echo everything Jenelle said. And I think the first one is the hardest. If anyone's struggling, I actually have a format of an email you can write to write your first networking email. I'll put my email in the chat. I'm happy to share that with anyone on this call. And I think once you get started, you'll find, as Jenelle said, you may not get responses from everyone, but you will get responses from some people. And so it is a little bit of, you have to put yourself out there if this is what you really want. Just just go for it. The hardest couple are the most difficult, and once you get rolling, you are actually going to find it can be a really great process to learn more about the career you're passionate about.
I want to respond to a question I see in the chat that's related to this, which is that speaking from my own personal experience, because I have like a kind of unique background, I get a lot of LinkedIn messages from people I've met and have not met, because I did Teach for America and Swarthmore and Berkeley and MLT and like all these programs. People will always be like, oh, I did MLT too, can we chat? Or I went to Swarthmore, can we chat? Or I'm a teacher who now wants to go to business school, blah, blah, blah. And generally, I will respond. And if I'm using myself as an example, I think that that's generally true. Like if someone has capacity and you share some type of common connection, or if you just come across as like humble but interested in chatting, most people are generally open. So I mean, I feel like the best way to reach out to someone, even if you don't know them personally or haven't talked to them in a long time, is just try to be gracious, express interest. People like talking about themselves. So if you tell someone like, I would just really love to hear about your story, like that's a pretty inviting way. Most people will respond well to that.
That's great advice. And that was for the question of the best way to reach out to a connection so it doesn't sound transactional. So that's great. Thank you, Jenelle. What about you, Nikki? Have any additional response to that?
Yeah, I love Janelle's humble but expressing interest. I think that's such a great tone to take in those messages. And I think reach out to people who you're genuinely interested in talking to. Try to start with people who you actually want to learn from, informational interviews. They have an interesting career path. I think it's great for first couple conversations. Maybe try to reach out to people who are 5 to 10 years ahead of you in their career. Maybe don't ask the CEO for your first informational interview, though. If you want to, I'm not going to hold you back, but maybe try to learn from someone who's had to make some of the decisions you might be facing more recently. And then I think over time, continuing to build your network with those decision makers and more senior leaders will be very instrumental to having mentorship and sponsorship in your career.
That's great advice. So if there's no additional questions, Jenelle and Nikki, any parting advice that you would have for the group? Jenelle, we can start with you and then Nikki.
I guess the one parting advice I'd share is the one mantra I had for myself when I was in the job search after grad school was, I just told myself, like, I made it this far. I didn't come this far for it to all come crumbling down. I was like, it's only a matter of time. I just kept my eye on like the big picture. And I know that can be so difficult when you're in the thick of it and in the weeds of a job search, but just try to keep your eyes on the prize, like see the big picture. This is just one small snippet of your journey, even though it doesn't feel like it. Don't get stuck here, like really see the end game.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Jenelle, that's great advice. Something else I would say is make the first step. Don't feel like you have to make the lifetime commitment. So try to test out if you're not sure, for example, if you want to go into a customer experience job or an operations job, start by having an informational interview with someone in each of those roles before feeling like having a conversation is committing you to a lifetime in that job. So just try to test out the things that you're interested in by having a conversation, going to an information session about a company, maybe volunteering, doing something to build skills you're interested in, or joining a club. Try to just test the things you're interested in, because I think we learn a lot from our lived experiences as well and the information we can gather from others. And also feel like if you try one of those things out and you don't like it, it's okay to say no and move on to something else, and you learn something, and that's awesome. So I think just kind of get the ball rolling, and you can be amazed by the progress you can make.
And it looks like we have one last question to come in. If you guys can stick around for a quick second. You said you spoke about crafting your story, and just wanted to hear any tips that you have for people who are either they are changing their career, trying to build their story in a new industry.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in there since I've changed industries a couple of times. So I think the biggest piece is people will be interested in why you want to make a change. So just having a clear story around why you want to make a change. Also, thinking about the situation from the person's shoes you're talking to. So how can you talk about translating experiences that you've had in a prior role or prior industry into a new industry? So the reality is there are probably many transferable skills and knowledge and things like that. So it's about telling the story and making it easy for that other person to see why you're very motivated about this transition, but also the value you can bring from your prior experiences. So that's, I think, a way to think about telling your story, and also how to frame things like your resume and LinkedIn and things like that.
Yeah, I think just to build off that, I sort of experienced this with myself when I was starting coaching. I remember getting some advice from a coach, and she said, people will see you like a coach when you do, like when I see myself as one. She's like, the minute you start telling people you're a coach, people will see you that way. And so like before I had clients, before anyone really cared what I had to say about coaching, like I decided that I was a coach, and I just started showing up that way. And it gave me more credibility when I did start actually talking to people about it, because I had already lived into that new identity and new belief. So I feel like I have another client who's actually working on something similar, stepping into a new role. And so we really focused on, well, like, what can you do now to really build your belief that you were already in that new identity, even though you don't have the exact job title yet? Like, can you, similar to what Nikki said, can you volunteer? Can you do things to show evidence that you're already that version of yourself, even though you may still be doing work that is still sort of about this past identity that you had? Because by taking that action, you kind of build your own sense of belief in yourself, which will come through more authentically when you start to share your story with others.
No, great advice. We really appreciate Jenelle and Nikki for you coming tonight and sharing your experiences and giving us some great words of wisdom. For everyone on the call, this doesn't have to be the end. We're opening up a forum that we hope to put resources in, things like Nikki talked about, to be able to kind of craft your emails, books, podcasts, different resources. And we want the community to add to those as well. So the forums will be open up right after this call. So just continue the conversation there. And also, just to let you know, we also have our second webinar in the series on October 22nd, tools for dealing with anxiety. And so we're going to have Dr. Christina Sapien and Leslie on for an interview, and hopefully it'll be pretty dynamic and interactive. And so hope we can join with us then and get some great tools there. So I hope tonight was a great first step, and hopefully you'll join us then and continue to engage with us. Thank you, Jenelle. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, thank you. Y'all have a great night, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.